Girl and Doobie here. What's the play for today? Well, today I'm playing around with some art supplies that just happened to fall into my cart when I was shopping at Michael's. These are from the Jane Davenport media, and pretty much she had me at Washi Tape, but I thought I'd try out some of her other stuff and see if they were as wonderful as what I was hoping. And I'll give you a little hint here, I guess as a spoiler, so cover your ears if you don't want to know what I thought of these. I loved playing with these. Her supplies are absolutely a blast. Well, people ask me, what can you do with all the gel prints that you make? Well, one of the things is start an art journal page. So I'm just going to put some glue stick around this, and I am going to stick it just directly onto a page in my journal. That way I've got some color and a place to start, never have to worry about that blank page and what are you going to do. So once I get this on here, I'm going to smooth it down nice and flat, and then I'm ready to start adding some color and play around with Jane Davenport's new goodies that she's come out with. First thing I want to do is get a little more color on here, so I'm going to start with her mermaid markers. Now what these are is watercolor in a water brush pen, and they are so wonderfully vibrant. Now if you haven't used these water pens much before, one of the nice things about them is like right now I'm getting sort of a dry brushy kind of look. That's because I'm not squeezing out a lot of the ink. So based on where you squeeze or how hard you squeeze will determine how much ink you have coming out of it. Now it's not like it's going to come gushing out unless you really give it a good squeeze like you're hanging on for dear life, but just a little bit of pressure and you start to get more ink with it. So you've got that flexibility to have it whichever way you want. Now anywhere that I've got white, that is just plain old naked paper and it absorbs up the watercolor wonderfully. Now notice wherever the pink is going over the blue paint, it starts to create a little bit of purple. That's because these watercolors are, well, they're watercolors, so they're translucent. So that means the colors will interact, they'll layer, they'll play together. It's lots of fun. You can see how little bits of where I had the blue under that last bit has a bit of a purple vibe to it. And one of the nice things about a brush tip is you can use the tip for something fine or detailed, or you can use the side of it if you want to cover a larger territory. And anywhere that I put it over something that's already painted, it's not going to absorb in as much. So that means I have the ability to take my finger or anything else that I want and rub a little bit of it off. So if I put some here and I decide, nah, I'm kind of changing my mind, I don't want it there, because it's on that painted surface, it's easy to blend around and just add a little bit of shading to it. And playing around with the colors, it's just a wee bit addictive. The entire rainbow's at your fingertips and you can add it however you want. Now I purposely picked this print to do my art journal page with because I wanted a page that would be able to put these supplies to the test, put them through their paces and see how they behaved. Because I've got some areas that are the plain naked paper and I've also got areas that are painted. Now I've also got a lot of texture in there. Places where I'm coloring in right now, some of that is ripped paper that has paint on top of it. I wanted something bumpy because how many times in my art journal do I have bumpy things that I'm trying to write over, color over? So that to me is one of the toughest things for supplies to work with. So that's what I wanted. So all these little details that I'm doing, all of a sudden I had the urge to go big and get a lot of ink on there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow that impulse and put a whole bunch of it on there. The parts where it's got a lot of paint, you can see it's kind of floating on top and it's staying wet. Anywhere where it's mostly naked paper, it's absorbing right in. So this is kind of like I'm putting big puddles of watercolor on different parts of the page. Now I liked how the big puddles looked, but there was one little catch for me. Is it takes them a little while to dry because after all it's wet stuff sitting on top of paint. So I decided to distract myself and color in a few other areas to see if that would be enough time for them to dry. And I love how when you put this over the pink you get that rich purple there. Well, as I'm doing this, it's taking them longer to dry than what I wanted. So I could have gotten out the heat gun, but that's just crazy talk. So instead I decided to blot some of it up with a baby wipe. And now I've got a more subtle, delicate bit of color there instead of my big, bold puddles. So you've probably guessed that I'm really enjoying playing with the supplies by this point. And the washi tape, well, let's just say, scrumptious, delightful, heavenly. It is these wonderfully drawn women, and I'm going to cut each one apart and spread them along so they can do this sort of curved arc thing down the page. Kind of like a rainbow fashion show happening across this page. Now you've probably noticed that I'm not pushing them down very hard. That's because I have no faith in my placement of things. Nice thing about washi tape is it's easily removable if you haven't really pushed it down. So because I didn't get the last one in there, I'm going to rearrange them a little bit, tighten up the lineup. That way I can get my last woman in there. Once I've got that in place, then I'll go along and actually push them down completely all the way so that they'll stay in place. So now I'm going to put some writing on here. I want to do some scribble journaling, and I'm going to try out the paint over pens. It says they're opaque, but until I test it out, I don't always believe that stuff. Turns out Jane is right on the money here. They are wonderfully opaque. So I'm going to call this one a win, but I want to test out a little bit more. Now with color, okay, but it's the white. That's the one. Finding a good white pen is always a challenge. So I'm going to try out her white pens. Now in the pack you get two. You get a fine tip and a bold tip. Since I did the bold tip with the other color, I'm going to try out the fine tip. Putting it over that darker blue color, sure enough, it stays wonderfully white and easy to write with. Well, now I'm going to try out her fountain pen, which she calls her incredible pen. And I'm writing over the painted area. There's lots of texture here. There are lots of bumps and that kind of stuff. And it did a beautiful job writing over that. So big credit to her on that. But I'm going to see how it feels when actual scribble journaling. And I'm actually going to give it a tough place to journal over because the part that I'm going to pick has a lot of texture to it. So that means sometimes a lot of pens will skip or bump up or snag. And as I'm doing it with this one, it flows beautifully. It's not snagging, it's not skipping, it's got a nice feel to it. The ink that's in this is water reactive, so very much like a watercolor would react to water. If this stuff gets wet or I were to brush water across it, it would smear and run. So what's my final verdict on the Jane Davenport media? It's an absolute A+. It's clear that Jane is an art journal and that she was thinking about what the needs of an art journaler were when she put her products together. Now this page is just about finished, but the fun doesn't have to end here. If you'd like to find out more of what I'm up to, head on over to the blog at acolorfuljourney.com where I've got a free newsletter with downloadable sparks of artspiration for you. And of course, I've got lots of YouTube videos for you to check out. If you've been enjoying this one, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as I have a new video out. Well, thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.